So we're looking at midpoint formula right now, and to just talk about the idea of a midpoint on a line segment, let me make these markings on this figure right here. And anybody remember from yesterday what those tick marks mean, Sean?
They're the same.
They're the same. We got a vocab term for that.
Congruent.
Congruent. Okay, remember what our full definition for congruent was? Yeah, same shape and same. Good. So it's same size, same shape. Say that out loud. Same size, same shape.
Same size, same shape.
Okay. So on segment PQ, M is the midpoint. So off to the side of your drawing on your notes, go ahead and write this down. M is the midpoint of segment PQ. And we just said those tick marks represent congruent segments, right? And again, the value of those segments or the distance of those segments are equal. And oftentimes, students will say equal, but in geometry, we're typically talking about some geometric figure. So a segment, we're going to go ahead and define as congruent, same size, same shape, not necessarily just equal to, which means we're going to use the congruent symbol to show that. So we're not just going to say PM equals PQ. Go ahead and write this down as well. So M is the midpoint of PQ, therefore segment PM is congruent to segment MQ. Anybody know the symbol for congruent? Just off the top of your head?
Equals slash?
Almost. Equal sign with something.
I don't know.
Not quite. It's a little squiggly on top, just like that. So go ahead and it's a different symbol. So this symbol means congruent. Okay, so that kind of completes our definition for midpoint there. If we have a midpoint on a segment, it's exactly in the middle, which means it's 50% of the way from one endpoint to the other, which means it creates two congruent segments. So again, on segment PQ, if M is the midpoint, segment PM is congruent to segment MQ. We all good on that?
How do you know that point is in the middle?
Yeah, so the problem, good question. The problem has to tell you. If the problem did not specifically say M is the midpoint or have those tick marks, then we can't assume that. So we either have to be told M is the midpoint or we've got to be given a figure with congruent tick marks, and that way we would also know that it's a midpoint. Okay, good question. Let's look at a practice problem using the midpoint formula. Actually, I'll take that back. Let me point out one quick thing here. On the midpoint formula, you should have that written down in your notes, x1 plus x2 over 2. Does this look familiar? Something plus something over 2. Like where else in math prior to geometry have we seen that? Not just in the formula for midpoint, but something plus something over 2. Preston, you gotta.
Is it like slope formula or similar to? It's not slope riser but line.
Yeah, not quite, but I appreciate the taking a stab at it. Towns.
Is the midpoint formula that whole thing or just the x part?
Good question. The midpoint formula is split up into a coordinate pair. So the midpoint of any two endpoints is a coordinate x comma y, and the way you find that coordinate pair is by doing setting up these two fractions. We'll do an example problem in a second. One more guess, Kate. What were you gonna say? You raise your hand.
Oh, I was just gonna say because it's being divided by 2, it's kind of like the quadratic formula, but not really.
Similar. So, and my other classes haven't really got there either. It's just like taking the average. How do you take the average of any set of numbers? You add them all together, and then divide by however many numbers there are. So we've got two numbers here, x1 and x2, and we're dividing by 2. So what we're doing is we're taking the average of our two x coordinates and the average of our two y coordinates. Really just giving you guys another way to think about what this formula looks like, how it's set up. So let's go ahead and do a practice problem. I'm going to give y'all just 60 seconds. Give me a sketch of this number line in your notebook. Okay, so finish drawing up the number line, and we're going to look at just two quick examples. So we're not quite working with the midpoint formula just yet because we don't have coordinates. We don't have like XY coordinates on a number line. This is just asking us to find the midpoint of each segment on the number line. So segment RT. If we look at the number line, we've got segment RT right here. It's asking us to find the midpoint. It's the point that cuts the segment in half. It's a point that cuts the segment in half, right? So on a number line, I mean, the most simple way we could do this is from T to R. Where's my eraser? From T to R, we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tick marks across the number line, 6 spaces across the number line. So if we go 6 all the way across, to cut it in half, the midpoint would just be 3. So 3 from my endpoint T and 3 spots from my endpoint R would land me where? At point S, or the number 1 on the number line, right? Okay, so simple enough there. The other way we can think about this is if we use the midpoint formula, we're going to take the average of the two endpoints. So endpoint number 1 is at -2, endpoint number 2 is at 4. 4 plus -2 over 2, right? The average of those 2 points equals 2 over 2 equals 1. So that's our midpoint, right? You'll see how we got there. Okay, we'll just do one more of those. Again, on a number line, relatively simple. The midpoint of QR. QR. So now, oh, I guess I'm going to leave that there. Now we're looking at QR. And again, we're just going to go all the way from Q to R. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cut it in half. 2. So 2 spaces from Q. And, man, my computer's been doing funky stuff with the notes. 2 spaces from Q and 2 spaces from R. Right? And it lands us at -4. Okay? Or, again, we could take the 2 endpoints and divide them by 2. -6 plus -2 over 2 equals -8 over 2, which equals -4, and that's our midpoint. Okay, any questions on those two number line problems? Okay, we're going to move on. There's a couple of those on the homework, not many. Okay, here's kind of the bulk of what you're going to be doing on the homework today. It says find the coordinates of the midpoint given the 2 endpoints of the segment. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw this scenario really quick. Okay, so draw segment KH. Draw segment KH with a midpoint at point M. So segment KH, just like this, with a midpoint at M. Okay, now visually, these coordinates, if we were to graph them, right, K and H, would actually give us a sloped line, right? It wouldn't just be horizontal left and right like this line is right here. But for the sake of the drawing or the visual, we can just have any arbitrary segment with a midpoint just to kind of sketch this problem out, okay? Similar to distance formula yesterday, what was the first thing we did on our distance formula problem? Before we plugged anything into the formula, what did we have to do? Do y'all remember? Same deal, we had x1, y1, and x2, y2 yesterday with the distance formula. Do y'all remember what we did before we plugged anything in? Yeah, we labeled our 2 coordinates, right? We do the same thing with midpoint. Your endpoints need to get labeled. x1, y1, go ahead and do this on your notes, and x2, y2. Okay, so that's step 1 for the distance formula and the midpoint formula. And again, these subscripts, they can't be mixed and matched. So you can't have x1 and y2 and then x2 and y1. the subscripts have to match. That's really, really important for the organization of the problem. X1, Y1 go together, X2, Y2 go together. Okay? And we're just going to start plugging those in to our midpoint formula. So over here, I'm going to have to kind of go off here to the right. We've got the midpoint is equal to X1 plus X2 over 2. And this is just our formula that we got from the book at the beginning of class, Y1 plus Y2 over 2. And it's in parentheses again because it is a coordinate point. And really, guys, all we're doing is taking our values and plugging them into the formula. So X1 and X2, -9 and 5. So I'm going to come over here and plug in -9 for X1 and 5 for X2. And then my Y1 and Y2 values are 3 and 7. 3 and 7. So I've got Y1 is 3, Y2 is 7, and we're rocking and rolling, right? -9 plus 5 is -4 over 2, comma, 3 plus 7 is 10. And we're going to finish by simplifying those fractions. So we get -2, comma, 5. And we're going to write that as a coordinate point because, again, when we're given coordinates as our endpoints over here, right, then our midpoint is also going to be an XY coordinate. Okay, is this concept kind of coming together? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down on midpoint formula on that example problem. Okay, we've just got, let's just do one more together. So we got 3 problem types today. We've got the number line, problem type number 1, midpoint formula given 2 endpoints, second problem type, and then the third problem type you're going to get today is you get the midpoint and now you're missing an endpoint. So you've got to kind of work backwards to find the missing endpoint. So let's go ahead and draw this picture. E is the midpoint of segment DF. Go ahead and draw that picture. E is the midpoint of segment DF. I'll give you just a second to try and do that on your own.
Which one should we draw, A or not?
Told us E is the midpoint. So E is going to be our midpoint. Points D and F are the endpoints. So what are we given here? We're given point D and point E. Okay, so go ahead and label those. Oops, -3, -8, and E 1, comma, -2. And then point F is our missing endpoint that we're trying to solve for. So I'm just going to label point F, right, as those missing values, X and Y. And here's how we're going to do this. We can separate the midpoint formula into 2 separate problems to find an X value and a Y value, right? So here we can label our endpoints just like we did in the previous problem. Go ahead and do this on your notes, X1 and Y1. And then point F, we can label X2 and Y2. And then I'm going to label my midpoint, right, to kind of keep this organized here, M X value and M Y value. The midpoint X and the midpoint Y. And really nothing too complicated. We're just going to take our midpoint formula and we're going to separate it into an X and a Y. We're going to separate it out into an X and a Y coordinate or equation. So the midpoint for X equals X1 plus X2 over 2. And the midpoint for the Y coordinate equals Y1 plus Y2 over 2. And we're just going to use both of these fractions to solve for our missing X2 and Y2 at point F. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to give you guys just maybe 90 seconds. See if you can solve for X2 and Y2. Ready, go.